A one-day break, and we are right back on the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast, live with you on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, ESPN at Field Matthew and Stefania, back from New York, a raucous crowd. That was a lot of fun.
Was it a lot of fun or a lot of fun? I'm just curious if it suddenly became Irish somehow.
It was a lot of fun, Matthew. A lot of fun there in New York.
I feel like the F was silent, right? When the first time he said it, right? I'm not crazy
like
about
Lando
that.
Lakes.
I think it was O apostrophe.
Right, like Shaquille O'Neal.
Exactly.
Another great Irish talent.
A lot of fun there in New York, and we have some news. We are not done with the live podcast yet. The next stop on our tour across and around America.
Drum roll.
Is Baltimore. Looking forward to going to Baltimore, Maryland. More details to come. We will be announcing, I believe, at some point the next couple of weeks, Daniel. Is that probably a fair estimate of time?
That is a fair estimate of time.
Great city of Baltimore, home of the Ravens, home of the fledgling Orioles. We'll give that part a break, but looking forward to being there in Baltimore.
Home of a bunch of crab cakes that are going to be in my belly.
We are going
in the
to
pre-show meal. I need to know where I should get my crab cakes from, because what happens is before these shows, Elizabeth, our road manager, always asks us for our meal, what we would like on our meal. By the way, she does it in a group text, so there's like 10 of us. So I understand. Stefania's order is always the longest, FYI. Starfania, like everyone else, just sort of like says, I'll do this and this, and Starfania does like an insanely long, detailed order, as you might imagine.
As I said in the group text, I write in complete sentences.
Whatever. I mean, I'm just saying it's long and detailed and hold the vinaigrette except for one spot in the left corner if you could, and cut the crust, and I'm gonna need just 6 ice cubes in my tea, just 6.
So looking forward to being in Baltimore later on this season. We cannot wait to do that. It's always a great atmosphere, and we loved going to new cities, just like we love going to the old ones. New York was great. That podcast is now live. We've got a ton of stuff going on. Third week of the preseason, the most substantive one. So let's get right to it.
Rewind. Fantasy news from the National Football League. This is the instant replay.
We are, by the way, taking your submissions for our fantasy show league, for the show league. You can send it to fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com. Tell us why you should be in the league this year. Right. Fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com. Right. We'll be filling out the league next week. Drafts are around the corner.
So, and to be clear here, last year we had a man's league, we have a women's league. So it's been rebranded. It is the Fantasy Focus Show League, but it is still a 16-team league. It is still an intense, deep league where you get to play against Daniel.
Looking forward to that.
Not
very
just
much.
me. I'm going to be I'm going to be the head of one division. Stefania is going to be the head of the other division, and then everyone's going to get a chance to play in the league with Stefania and I.
Is that what it is?
That's what we're doing, yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Got it.
There you have it.
All right, there you have it.
Yep, so looking forward to that. Fantasyfocuspodcast@gmail.com. Please, your submissions. We want creativity. We want some humor. We want some levity. We don't want boring, plain Jane, anything of that nature.
Tell us why you should be in the league and keep it under 500 words, 300
I'll
words.
tell you what, Matthew. You tell me what the word limit is. You're the king of the word limit.
When you think of like a quick email, just like use Matthew's interpretation of quick, and then just follow that standard. All right, so there was a report.
I will say 400 words. Keep it under 400 words.
Love it.
400 words is a good target there. There was a report yesterday that there is an expectation Melvin Gordon could hold out into the regular season. This sort of basically just aligns with what Adam Schefter said during the fantasy marathon and throughout the preseason. But people are becoming more and more nervous about Melvin Gordon. Matthew, we've got to the point now where we're not talking about drafts upcoming. They're here. People are drafting right now. How much does Melvin Gordon stock drop for you?
I have him at running back 20. I have him as a third-round pick in my overall ranks. And truthfully, just being honest, like I ranked him.
Running back 20 is still a third-round pick for you?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's about where it is.
Wow. That's right.
Let me look. Hang on. Let me look exactly where I have him. Let me see exactly where I have him. I don't have all top 200 of mine. You know what? He's a fourth-round pick. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay. Yeah,
it's fourth-round pick.
20th running back.
Yeah. So he's running back. He is literally running back 40 for me. So he's right there on the end of the fourth.
40.
Yeah, overall 40. Yep. Overall 40. 40th overall. So, yeah, and truthfully, I can't imagine drafting him this year. Like, I ranked him where I ranked him, but I probably should rank him lower. But I can't imagine drafting him or feeling comfortable at all. And I think it's it's twofold, right? So number one is there's a little bit of Le'Veon Bell, sort of PTSD here, right? You sort of feel like, because I think previously you would be like, hey, there's no chance he misses the season, like whatever, he's chirping and everything like that, but at some point he's going to show up. But then you see what Le'Veon did last year, and I think not only for people who play fantasy, but also for other NFL players, specifically running backs, they sit there and they look at that and they're like, maybe that's a path for me. So my expectation is that, again, as you said, Adam talked about this throughout the marathon last week, that he expects it to, that he thinks it could last into the season. And there is a chance, and it's hard for me to put a percentage on what the chance is, but there's a chance this goes all the way to week 10. He would have to report in week 10 in order to accrue a year of service so that he could be a free agent after this season, right? Do I have that right or no?
You do not, but
okay.
So, but there's a lot more. But basically, week 10 is an important date, separate and apart from what it means for his years beyond 2019. Week 10 is an important date. Yes, I'm with you. I mean, listen, at this point, I don't know where I'd feel comfortable drafting Melvin Gordon. Yeah, 7th round, sure, sweet, that's fine. But he's not going to be there in the 7th round. I'm going to let most people draft Melvin Gordon in my leagues, but
I don't think you can go until he shows up. I don't think you can draft him as a starter. He cannot be one of your first 2 running backs.
No question. Or flex, for that matter. Right? You need to have your flex filled out and your 2 running backs before you're comfortable taking Melvin Gordon. Where I think it maybe gets more interesting is what it means for the other running backs, because we have maybe learned a little something about how this backfield will shake out without Melvin Gordon. Our good buddy Adam Levitan, now of EstablishTheRun.com, has Austin Eckler at 25 snaps played with the first team offense this preseason. That's 12 more than Justin Jackson, who's played just 13. So it feels like if we've learned something this preseason, it's that, hey, no Melvin Gordon means Austin Eckler is a starter in Los Angeles. How high is he climbing up your ranks as Melvin Gordon continues to drop?
Yeah, I mean, not that much. I mean, I'm slightly higher than you. I have Eckler at 37. You have him at 43.
Going 33rd amongst backs.
Yeah, so you and I are both lower than the ADP, and maybe I'll look at that a little bit here. I guess my concern is that I know what's going on in the preseason here, but last year, after the first game, it was a near even split. The 3 games in the actual regular season, it was a mere split between Eckler and Justin Jackson. And I sort of feel like Jackson has, again, I have Eckler ranked ahead of Jackson, but I feel like Jackson has more touchdown upside than Eckler.
Yeah, probably. I think he's maybe a more well-rounded player. Austin Eckler, a couple of things here. Whether they will use him this way or not, he's perhaps their best special teams player. They may want to continue to keep some of that role carved in for Austin Eckler. Correct. Second of all, he's relatively pint-sized. He's not Darren Sproles, but he's also not the kind of back that I think you want to be handed the football off to 20 or so times a game, which is maybe more where you feel comfortable with Melvin Gordon or Justin Jackson, who's being drafted in just 15% of leagues right now. So I'm actually okay with where each one of us has him. Maybe I'll move him up a little bit here.
Yeah.
But I don't know that this is going to be a one-man show in Los Angeles.
No, it's going to be a running back by committee. And, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like Melvin Gordon is also dicey to roster. Because last year, at least, by the time you had real concern, like, in middle of August, late August, about Le'Veon Bell, you would know, okay, let me go get James Conner. And that way, at least I've got the Steelers running back wrapped up. And so, but with Melvin Gordon, you're using, in essence, 3 roster spots on the Chargers starting running back. There's not one guy where you're like, that guy will also be really, really good. I like Eckler as a player, and I like him as a fantasy option as kind of a flex, maybe with a little bit of upside here, but it's going to be tough. I think it's just the whole situation is not #ideal.
What I will say, just to put a pin in this, is that I think there's a chance that Austin Eckler, wherever his ADP rounds out at, I think it'll be sort of sprayed all over the board, right? I think there'll be people that will be very aggressive with Austin Eckler. They'll be drafting him as a potential top 15 or 20 running back. I think there'll be some people that will say, like, I'm so concerned about the workload share that he'll go later, like the 32 or whatever, 33 right now for his ADP amongst running backs might not be a reflection of just like a bunch of people drafting between 30 and 36. It might be like some 15s, some 50, something like that. Let's move on to the Cardinals because
before we do, real quickly, I think this is interesting. So Thirsty Kyle threw up the schedule for the Chargers there on the board. So that's pretty interesting. So let's pretend Melvin Gordon reports by week 10, right? So you tell me I've got the contract intro stuff wrong, which is why I really shouldn't wade into those waters, right? I'm not an NFL insider like Scoop over here. But the fact is that seems to be Here's a question for you then, Field. When can Melvin Gordon report at the very latest and still get credit for this year to become a free agent in 2020?
That deadline passed August 6th.
Okay.
For him, Zeke, all the players that held out. That's why guys, so we talked about that on August 6th. It's behind us.
Right. I don't listen to the show. I just download.
Gotcha.
Understood. All right. So, but week 10, then you said week 10 is an important.
Again, I think that the minutia of the contract stuff is not important. What is important is that week 10 is a date you need to know of. What it means is not important to 2020 for 2020.
Fine.
Let's talk about 2019.
Okay.
Week 10 is important. Yes.
Okay.
It's a week 10 is an important date.
Okay. So then you look at the Chargers schedule starting there. So week 10, they're at Oakland. But are you necessarily starting Melvin Gordon in his first week back? You don't know what the usage is going to be, what he looks like if he's been out of camp. Let's pretend he reports by week 10. He's practicing that week. You're not starting him week 10 at Oakland. Week 11, home to Kansas City. Maybe if you see him do something in week 10, okay, great, fine. You start him in Kansas City. But then you think about this. Week 12, it's a bye. Can't use him then. Week 13 at Denver. Week 14 at Jacksonville. Week 15, home to Minnesota. Those are, at least as we sit here in the preseason, 3 really good run defenses that we expect to be good run defenses this year.
It's
Melvin Gordon is a matchup-proof kind of guy,
really good,
still, none of that after sitting out for 10 weeks. That doesn't give you, the warm and fuzzies. The fantasy warm and fuzzies.
There is a ton of risk with Melvin Gordon. There's no two ways about that. The Cardinals agreed to terms on a 1-year deal with Michael Crabtree, turns 32 in September. Of course, last year played in Baltimore, was cut after the season. As the offense evolved, a lot of money still due to Michael Crabtree. There was a report that he nearly agreed to a deal with them a couple of weeks ago. He ended up doubling back here. Perhaps that's tied into the fact that Hakeem Butler, 4th-round pick out of Iowa State, broke a finger and could miss significant time here. If I tell you that Michael Crabtree signed, does it make him fantasy relevant? Does it help Kyler Murray? Does it depreciate the value of any other young wide receivers? Does this mean anything at all?
Sort of-ish. So here's the thing. It's fantasy relevant. Is he more fantasy relevant? Of course he is, because now he's actually playing in the NFL. 2 days ago, he wasn't. So he's certainly more fantasy relevant than he was 2 days ago. But is he somebody I'm rushing out to draft? No. I literally think I ranked him like wide receiver 86 or something like that. I mean, so.
84 personally.
I understand you like him a little bit more than I do. There at 84. But I don't know that Crabtree is somebody that you're targeting any kind of draft, but you're sort of keeping an eye on, obviously, because he's a big name and he has been fantasy relevant in the past, not last year necessarily, but a lot of things went wrong for the Ravens last season. The big piece that I think is interesting here is twofold. Number one is there is a familiarity with, the Texas Tech air raid concepts, if you will. I mean, it's look, I'm trying to find a positive here. He was before Kingsbury, but I'm just whatever. And so he's played in a similar system, I should say. And the other piece of it here is that it's a veteran wide receiver for Kyler Murray, right? So, and that can be helpful. To answer your question, am I lowering my ranks on Larry Fitzgerald or Christian Kirk because of Michael Crabtree being there? I'm not.
So that's the question. That's the heart of it. I think that's what people care about most here. With Michael Crabtree, we'll see if he makes the team. I'm not even sure that's a guarantee. I haven't seen the contract or the structure of it, but we'll see whether he makes the team and then perhaps what kind of impact he has. For now.
Does that happen a lot where you get to see the contract? Where they send it to you?
Sure.
Hey, let's make sure Field Yates has this contract.
No,
you think
I think we all know what I mean. The contract terms are something to keep an eye on.
The contract terms? Got it.
The Steelers offensive coordinator.
I just like him with a little monocle or whatever, just sort of reading the contract.
Was asked whether we'll see Vance McDonald more and more this year, given that Jesse James is now a Detroit Lion. And here's the response. He won't. He's never going to play the full game. That's never going to happen. Matthew, you've been on the Vance McDonald train this offseason. Does this change your perception of him where you have him right now at tight end 7?
None whatsoever.
Okay, how come?
None whatsoever. So good. I'm glad he put that out there. I hope people avoid Vance McDonald. I hope people, I hope his ADP drops. I can get him even cheaper. Give me all the Vance McDonald. So first off, last year, remember, Vance McDonald missed week 1, right? So from week two on, Vance McDonald, 9th among all tight ends in red zone targets, 11th in total tight end targets, again, with Jesse James there.
Yep.
Was finished as a top 10 fantasy tight end last year. He played 54% of snaps. So even if he doesn't play a full game, there's still some room. There's still, 46% of snaps available, right? So he could play half of that, and not play a full game, but still now he's playing 75% of snaps instead of the 54% he played last year. Last year, he had an 11.3% target share. Okay, again, finishes a top 10 fantasy tight end with Jesse James there. Even if he plays the exact same number of snaps, say he plays 54%, he doesn't improve his snaps. And I think the quote was more about no, he's never playing a full game. But even if they say no, you're playing the exact same amount, he's only playing 54% of snaps. I believe that target share, the 11.3% target share goes up because, again, Antonio Brown, Jesse James, over 200 targets have left that team. And I don't think all 200 of those targets go to Dante Moncrief or Deontay Johnson or James Washington. So I think he could play the same number of snaps and still increase his target share, increase his fantasy value. He's the most experienced receiver beyond Juju on that team.
He certainly is. Yeah, he's actually even more experienced than Juju Smith-Schuster for that reason. But not that he's been more impactful. But yeah, a talented player. Once was signed by the 49ers to a 5-year, I believe, $35 million extension. Very good athlete is Vance McDonald. And you're right. The gateway is not necessarily playing more snaps. It's seeing more targets. Matthew continues to dig his heels in there. Demaryius Thomas is off the PUP list. I just want to quickly ask Stefania if him and Emmanuel Sanders are sort of, and I understand that Emmanuel Sanders is even further along than Demaryius Thomas, but way to go. These two veteran receivers are making expedient returns to the field after perhaps the most significant injury that we commonly see amongst NFL players in an Achilles tear.
Yeah, I think the conception about Achilles injuries is going to shift a little bit. And it also depends on the position that you play, to be honest. Running backs seem to struggle a little bit more with the injury. Don't know why, but as a group, that's been the case. But with the advent of a procedure in recent years that's becoming more and more popular where they do this, what they call a mini open. It's a much smaller incision. Recovery seems to be quicker. That's not the case with everybody who is recovering quickly, but that is part of the reason that you see guys coming back faster. And I think just people are more comfortable with when you can progress and push these guys, and they're being freed up to do so a little bit earlier.
Well, it's good news on Demaryius Thomas. I'll just say this. I don't think any of us is really similar, right? Michael Crabtree. It may not be as low as Michael Crabtree because it's a better passing offense, we believe, but this really is not so much about Demaryius Thomas and all of a sudden becoming a must-draft player or anything like that. It doesn't hurt Tom Brady, who over the past few days has seen his wide receiver group evolve from the idea of Jacoby Myers being on the field to start the game, which he's had a great camp. But you go from the players that were taking first-team reps a few days ago to now a wide receiver group the group could feature to begin the season. Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman, Demaryius Thomas. Obviously, question marks with both Gordon and Thomas. But if, and this is a big if, those guys are healthy and able to play for 16 games, Tom Brady's weapons look a little more daunting than they did at one point when the Patriots wide receiver group was as big of a question mark as any in the NFL. One more piece here is The Athletic, and this is sort of projection season, right? I'm not talking about Mike Clay. I'm talking about 53-man roster projection. So an Athletic Kansas City projection has Darwin Thompson ahead of Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde, I believe, even off the projection entirely. Matthew, you buying it? Is there some substance here behind the idea that Darwin Thompson is the number 2 running back in Kansas City?
Yeah, I think I buy it in this way, shape, or form. And I feel like we'll see how the 53-man comes out and if Hyde is on it or not.
Okay.
But I buy it in this sense from a fantasy perspective. If you're taking a flyer on a non-Damian Williams Kansas City running back,
yep,
I think it should be Darwin Thompson. Mm-hmm. I don't believe Carlos Hyde at this point in his career, is anyone that you really need to be worried about. I'm not worried about Carlos Hyde from a Damian Williams perspective. And I think that if anything were to happen to Damian Williams, I think it would be somewhat of a committee. I don't think Carlos Hyde would suddenly become the starting running back. Darwin Thompson, however, a 6th-round pick out of Utah State, an explosive player. This preseason, 9 for 52. He has a 29-yard receiving touchdown. So in limited time and against its own backup defenses and the whole thing, but he's looked good. He looks the part of kind of an explosive player, a guy that sort of fits Andy Reid's offense, a guy that you could get into space and he could do some damage. Remember at college, 6.8 yards per carry, 7.9 yards per touch. Again, it was for Utah State, but still, this guy he's a smaller guy, but he's unbelievably fast and, by the way, and stronger than you think. He's not like a little guy in the Darren Sproles jitterbug way, if you will, for lack of a phrase. But he's a smaller guy, but he's built. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I like it. Well-built Darwin Thompson, that works. I know people have been excited about him observing the Kansas City Chiefs. I know for a fact the Kansas City Chiefs feel optimistic about Darwin Thompson as well. The most challenging part for the Chiefs this year might be feeding all of the mouths. They have got plenty of talent. I don't think, just to reiterate to people or just to make clear to people, I don't think there has been a loosening of the grip that Damian Williams has on the starting job. I do believe he remains the starter, but I agree that if you are taking a second Chiefs running back to pair with Damian Williams or just for the upside, Darwin Thompson is the guy over Carlos Hyde. We're going to talk about the Texans, but first, hiring used to be hard. Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process, but today, hiring can be easy, and you only have to go to one place to get it done. ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. As applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one and spotlights top candidates so you never miss a great match. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/06010. That's ZipRecruiter.com/06010. One more time. ZipRecruiter.com/06010. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Double trouble. Double trouble. Double trouble. Double trouble.
As of this moment, they're on double secret probation.
We begin today with the Houston Texans as we continue along with our AFC South preview. The Houston Texans last year won this division, but were bounced in the first round by the Indianapolis Colts. Vegas has them at 8.5 wins. Deshaun Watson is brilliant. He's remarkable. He might be my favorite player in the NFL to watch. He has a very consistent measure for rankings. Matthew has him at quarterback 2. Why? Because he's brilliant. I have him at quarterback 2. Duh. His
Why?
ADP
because
right now.
You're brilliant.
Well, that's debatable. Anyways, they're basically two schools of thought. His ADP right now for quarterbacks is 2.
So everybody's brilliant.
I mean, everyone's brilliant. We've all
Where do you have him, Stefania, on your quarterback list?
Number 2.
There you go.
2. So
look, Princeton approved.
He trails only Patrick Mahomes, obviously, in quarterback ranking. So maybe the question will be this. There are two questions with Deshaun Watson. I'm not doubting him as a QB1, but why is he the firm QB2 for you? And where do you draft Deshaun Watson?
Okay, so number one, why is he
versus like an Aaron Rodgers or Matt Ryan or anybody else?
I just think there's a high floor. Yeah. You know, you think about what he did at the beginning of last year, and just from a eye test standpoint, he wasn't a good NFL quarterback early on in the season last year. He really struggled.
Yeah,
and yet still put up fantasy points. To me, Deshaun Watson is just, because of the floor, because of the rushing floor, right?
Right.
Last year, we were talking about Mahomes because Mahomes was so otherworldly. But you think about what Deshaun Watson did last year. He became only the third quarterback in NFL history to pass for over 4,000 yards and rush for 500 yards in a single season. Only 2015 Russell Wilson and 2011 Cam Newton matched that. So again, a high rushing floor, a high passing floor. Look, he had 4 different top 2 finishes at the position, which is the same as Mahomes and Breeze. They tied with them for last year. Yep. Led all quarterbacks with 7 different games of 40 or more rushing yards in 2018. Again, going to the rushing. So for me, a fantasy-friendly offense, some elite wide receiving talent around it, the running ability of Deshaun Watson, the fact that they can't really run the ball all that much helps as well.
Yep.
So
high floor, you mentioned it, 10 games with 20-plus points last year, 3rd in rushing attempts amongst quarterbacks, 3rd in rushing yards, 3rd in rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
The guy clearly is an electric athlete. But Stefania, at one point we were concerned about the long-term durability for Deshaun Watson. He's torn his ACL twice. Have we moved past the point of injury concerns with DW4?
Well, and they were different knees, so that's a really important point, because if you do it twice in the same knee, that's a lot riskier in terms of comeback than tearing it once on each side. I will say this. After he had the torn ACL, he comes back last year. Matthew, you mentioned he didn't have a great start, but he was a guy coming off an ACL tear, still played all 16 games and still put up the numbers that you mentioned, including the rushing. So obviously got better as the season went on with that. The concern last year, if you guys remember, was how many hits he took. Even though he was on the field, he was getting crushed. And there was a lot of conversation happening about, you got to protect yourself. I think halfway through the season, they were really talking to him about, you've got to avoid these hits because we're worried about head injury in addition to everything else. But the fact that he stood up to all that punishment and still played in every game kind of gives you more confidence in his ability to withstand some of the punishment that he would otherwise take.
So no injury concerns, high floor, elite ceiling. This guy is a clear-cut top 2 quarterback for us this year. And his wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, there are no words to describe the brilliance of this player.
Talk about durability. Only one missed game since 2013.
And that was probably like a charity. Like he was probably like, you know what? I'm just going to be generous and miss this game so I don't torment you guys for like 300 receiving yards.
Nuts.
Wide receiver 2 for Matthew, wide receiver 2 for me. His actual ADP, though, is number 1 amongst wide receivers.
Why do you hate DeAndre Hopkins?
Why do you hate DeAndre Hopkins?
I'm just following you. I stole my ranks from you.
He is being drafted as a consensus first-round pick. Here are some of the ranks last year in which he was a top 3 player. Top 3 player in receptions. Top 3 player in target share. Top 3 player in end zone targets. Top 3 player in deep catches. I mentioned he was target share. He actually led the NFL in target share with over 33%. Literally 1 in 3 passes from Texans quarterbacks last year went DeAndre Hopkins' way. Matthew, if you were, we don't have to belabor this.
Look, I have Devontae Adams at 1, Hopkins at 2, but I have them right next to each other. I have them both as first-round picks, to your point. At least 12 fantasy points in all 16 games last season. Only wide receiver, as you talk about consistency, that had at least 3 top 5 performances and 0 weeks in which he finished outside the top 50 wide receivers since 2015. 3 different seasons with at least 1,300 receiving yards and 11 touchdown catches. No other player even has 2 in such stretch. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
sometimes with the analysis for us, it's not really analysis. It's just appreciation.
Yeah.
Like, just appreciate
Hashtag he's really good.
Yeah. Here's what I would say.
Here's a bunch of numbers that tell you what you already know. He's really good.
Right there. Here's where I think DeAndre Hopkins is sort of like most valuable is that there are a lot of people that, especially until Zeke returns or signs a contract, that right now at pick 5 specifically are confused, right? They feel really good about McCaffrey, Kamara, and obviously Saquon. Feel pretty good, feel almost as good about David Johnson. What do I do at pick 5? If you take DeAndre Hopkins, good on you. That player is worth it. His comrade in the receiving group is Will Fuller. Will Fuller, first round
or his friend, or his amigo, or his colleague.
Right, all those
or
work
his
as
pal.
well. Right, his pals.
Or his buddy.
Best friend. That also works.
Yeah.
Will Fuller, really talented player, Notre Dame first-round pick a few years ago. Big question, though, here is availability. Matthew,
Wingman would be another way to go.
Wingman also works. You've got him at wide receiver 29. I've got him at wide receiver.
Comrade, and I just said, All
right. Whatever. I've got him at wide receiver 38. ADP right now is wide receiver 33. Stefania, the biggest question with Will Fuller is this. He's going to miss some games. He's played 31 games in 3 seasons. That means he's missed 17 already.
He has not played all 16 games in his 3-year career. So that is going to be the concern. The different injuries, collarbone, rib injury, knee. That was the first season. Then last year tore his ACL. And obviously that was last October. He missed the final 9 games of last year. We haven't really seen much of him yet this year. He's on track to report, but again, with Will Fuller, you're kind of asking yourself, what's next? You love the way he plays. He's a physical wide receiver, but it seems to take a toll on him.
But Matthew,
what's next? Hang on, I'm asking myself what's next. I'm doing what Stefania just said.
Got it. Okay,
a little play acting here. And scene.
What is next?
What's next? For Will Fuller. Look, I'm at wide receiver 29. Look, and I think Stefania encapsulated it perfectly there, right? The question isn't the talent, the question is the health. The question is the availability. But given where he's going in the overall ranks, right? So he's currently going in the same area, sort of Sterling Shepard, Robbie Anderson, D.D. Westbrook. It's a tier that makes you comfortable taking a flyer on Will Fuller. It's the 10th round. He's going 99th overall. And so think about this. He's had 11 career games, Will Fuller has, with Deshaun Watson. In those 11 career games, 45 catches on 65 targets, 782 yards, 11 touchdowns, 17.2 fantasy points per game. That would have been wide receiver 13 on a per-game basis last year in 2018, just ahead of T.Y. Hilton. In fact, he actually averages 2.91 fantasy points per target with Deshaun Watson. Just to give you a reference point, Tyreek Hill averaged 2.46 fantasy points per target last season.
Yeah.
So, again, now, in some of that's inflated. He had a couple of crazy big games, and it's all small sample size because you're dealing with 11. But I think you're looking at a big arm quarterback, a talented wide receiver, a fantasy-friendly offense, and in the 10th round, tell me there's not a flyer worth taking that has the upside of Will Fuller.
Yeah, certainly he has plenty of upside. You just laid it out right there. I think my concerns and the reason why I'm a little bit lower are two things. One, the health, Stephon, you just covered. Then two is just that touchdown production you mentioned. It's really difficult for me to imagine he'll continue to score a touchdown a game with not that you're drafting him based on that spot for that, but I think that's bound to come back down to earth a little bit.
My only counter to that is that while I agree with you, like obviously the touchdown rate's going to come back because like when he started his career, he had like a 3 touchdown game and he had a couple of crazy games there.
Yeah.
But I would argue that all of that is baked into his ADP. That's why he's going in the 10th round.
That's why he's going where he's going. That's why I'm a little bit more concerned, though, just in terms of overall ranks.
Fair.
Kiki Cutie also in the mix for the Texans. He's consistent in this regard. In his very first game that he played, 11 catches. The last time we saw him on the field, 11 catches. In the 5 games in between then, 11 catches. Now, 5 games with 11 total catches. Stephon, though, part of it, he seems to always be banged up.
Well, and he had essentially one injury last year that cost him all those games for the season. He missed the first 3 games because of a hamstring injury. He aggravated it after he returned for a few weeks. He was out weeks 8 and 9. Then they had a bye. Comes back week 11 and 12, aggravates it again, and then ends up missing the rest of the season. So my understanding is that he really wanted to prove that he could be back and put together a full season, ends up with an ankle injury already to start this year and is questionable for week 1, very questionable. So, he has a chance to be there, but I'm sure they're balancing the whole, do you want to start a guy? Remember last year, he starts with an injury and it ends up causing him trouble throughout the season, or do you hold him out a little bit longer? I would just say I've been hearing good things about DeAndre Carter, who's filled in quite a bit for him when he's been hurt. Bill O'Brien already saying he's glad he has him around, in addition to his special team service, in case they are without Kiki Cutie at the start of the season.
So the other piece of this is, Field, all I was going to say was we don't really know what a full season of this offense looks like if Will Fuller stays healthy, which is obviously a big if. But
QT's production last year was largely in the absence of Will Fuller.
Correct. And by the way, that's before you even get into Duke Johnson, who I think will steal. If Kiki Cutie is out there at the same time as Duke Johnson, I don't think the Kiki Cutie gets the same target share. Remember, under 35 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4 games that Kiki Cutie played last year. So Duke Johnson, I think, is going to run similar routes and, some of that short passing stuff that Cutie did well with last year. So I'm out on Cutie. I mean, I have him at wide receiver 60. He's currently going as wide receiver 46. So it's clear that, Kiki Cutie and I will not be playing fantasy football together this year.
Lamar Miller, though, might be somebody on your radar, a longtime favorite of yours, Matthew. And I think Lamar Miller is ADP right now amongst running backs is 30th. I've got him at running back 28. You've got him at running back 31. He's consistent. Now, he's consistently average, but still fantasy value sometimes is rooted in availability and predictability. So here's what we know about Lamar Miller. He usually plays, the majority of games in a given season. Pretty reliable in terms of staying healthy. Beyond that, last year he played 14 games, okay? Of those 14 games, he had 14 or more touches in 12 of them. He's kind of the guy that Houston relies upon in the backfield. Now, is there a lot of upside there? No. He had 1 game last year with 20-plus fantasy points. He had 5 with single-digit fantasy points. So there's sort of this average in every way vibe about Lamar Miller, and I can't imagine that really changes this year, Matthew. It's his 4th season in Houston, and I kind of expect it to be like the first 3.
Yeah, and there was kind of an argument to be made for Lamar Miller. There was gaining some momentum, but he's going to be the only guy, and there's a high floor there. There's a consistency, right? There's not a lot of upside, but he's basically he's 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowhdowns.
Right.
That's what he is. What he is. He's kind of he is what he is. But then the addition of Duke Johnson, and they got rid of Deontay Foreman. For years, we kept thinking Deontay Foreman's going to take this job, and never did, couldn't get healthy, and now he's on the Colts. So we were it's the Lamar Miller show. Maybe he's going a little bit too low, but then they make the trade for Duke Johnson, and so Like you have him at 28, I have him at 31, running back 30. I think that's right. Like I think he's a number 3, number 4 running back. Like he's fine.
Right. He's not a terrible player. If you swing big in the early rounds on a running back, not a terrible player to end up with. Or if you go 0 running back strategy, which
Sure.
he might be a reasonable guy to look at because of the fact that you kind of you know what to expect out of him.
Yeah.
Every year. We've got a 3-year sample size, and not a lot is that different from 3 years ago to where he's at now. Obviously, the quarterback is different, but with Deshaun Watson, he's basically been the same player. He has a backfield comrade, teammate.
Yeah, you're very.
What do you want to call him?
You're going very Russian with this comrade.
What are you trying to say?
I'm just saying USA, baby, USA.
Okay. So what would you go with instead? He has a backfield
how about buddy?
Backfield
Pal,
buddy.
backfield buddy.
He's got a backfield buddy this year in Duke Johnson, who was recently acquired.
By the way,
in
this is a good time to announce that Field and I are starting a line of plush dolls called Backfield Buddies.
Backfield buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
Spice.
talk. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
Does it not?
No.
Duke Johnson.
Maybe it's something else to sell on FantasyLife.com.
Duke Johnson was acquired in a trade. It was a 4th-round pick that could be moved up to a 3rd-round pick, I believe, within certain. I think it might be the Texans make the playoffs. There's some sort of conditions. Yep. A mid-round pick being sent to Cleveland. Duke Johnson got what he wanted, and I tell you, there weren't a lot of obvious landing spots for me, only because so many teams going into camp kind of have their backfield set or cap strapped. But the Texans made a lot of sense. Duke Johnson, Matthew, Lamar Miller is sort of the similar type value, right? There's not a huge ceiling. There's a pretty reasonable floor because we are talking about legitimately one of the best receiving backs in the NFL.
There's no question about that. So during his career, during Duke Johnson's NFL career, he's 1st in receiving yards and 3rd among running backs in catches. So 1st in receiving yards among running backs, obviously, and 3rd among running backs in catches. Deshaun Watson, by the way, this is a good player for him. Completes over 73% of his career passes thrown less than 10 yards. When they're close, like he's good at getting him the ball. He's actually 6th best in the NFL in that stat. Passes thrown less than 10 yards. Again, over 45 catches and 400 receiving yards in all 4 of his years with the Browns. By the way, Lamar Miller, Thirsty Kyle has this note, which I think is pretty good. Lamar Miller has more career drops than touchdown receptions. Wow. Like just Lamar Miller has never been a guy that's been used in a huge way in the passing game. He's like a 25, 30 reception guy. And so my expectation is that Duke Johnson is really going to be the true 3rd down back here. I rank him lower than the ADP here just because, again,
his ADP is 36th amongst running backs.
And I have
40.
I'm at 40, and I'm slightly lower on him because here's some of the guys that I have ahead of Duke Johnson that are going in that area, right? So Darrell Henderson, Austin Eckler, Kenyon Drake, Rashad Penny. There's no scenario in which, again, you talk about floor, and it sort of goes to roster construction. But when I'm looking for running backs in that area, give me a guy that's got a chance to be a top 10 fantasy running back in a certain scenario, right? And so, Kenyon Drake could be if Kalen Ballage and things go right and it gets healthy, right? Same with Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny could be a top 10 fantasy running back if something happens to Chris Carson.
Yeah, I would have gone with a different example first than Kenyon Drake, right?
And Rashad.
Kenyon Drake's been a top 10 fantasy running back at various points in his career for weeks here and weeks there.
Right, or a week here, there. Yeah, I agree.
He's got big play upside.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, but you know what Duke Johnson has? Where's he from?
Oh, yeah.
The all-time leading rusher at Miami, by the way.
All-time leading rusher at Miami. And by the way, you talk about availability, the guy's never missed a game.
Never missed a game. He was banged up in the preseason, a hamstring issue. I'm not trying to be cynical.
He has been a little banged up. He had ankle issues, but he's never missed a game.
I honestly thought for a while it might have been one of those where we know we're trying to trade him. Duke, if you're feeling anything, just sit down. We'll hash out the trade. In the meantime, we're good. But Duke Johnson, I'm with you, Matthew. The ceiling is not that significant, which is part of the reason why we've got him as a low-end RB4, despite the passing game acumen.
Yeah, but I will say this. I thought the trade to Houston was good for him because I think he'll have more fantasy value. Yes, exactly. He might actually see the field.
It's a very sensible move by Houston, and I wouldn't be surprised if his role expands, but still, I'm talking about 45 catches to 55 catches or 60 catches, not something 80 catches this year for Duke Johnson.
Comrade.
Well done there.
You look up one word. So good.
We're going to take a quick break and come right back and talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Fantasy, you're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy, focus.
The NFL is always, going to bring you some disappointments year to year. Last year, no team was more disappointing, and probably disappointed than the Jacksonville Jaguars. Just a terrible season last year, which is why they ended up with the 7th overall pick in the draft. Vegas forecast them for 7.5 wins. But part of the reason why there's a more optimistic outlook is because they landed Nick Foles in free agency. 4 years.
They got that big Nick energy.
4 years, $88 million for Nick Foles, who, of course, starred in Philadelphia in a stretch run for the playoffs and the Super Bowl and played really well for them once again last year when Carson Wentz went down. But there's a difference playing really well and being fantasy relevant. I've got him as quarterback 25. You've got him as quarterback 26. Matthew, it's not
Why
the
do
same.
you love Nick Foles?
I know. I got a lot of reasons why.
Yeah, sure.
Nick Foles, obviously, much different receiving group around him here, right? It's one thing to be throwing to Zach Ertz and Alshon Jeffrey and all the pieces that were in place last year for Philadelphia. Not the same kind of offense. They want to run the crud of the ball right now in Jacksonville, and then it's just different, all right? I mean, like, Marquise Lee doesn't strike fear in the way that
Philadelphia had a better offensive weapons around him and had a more aggressive approach and everything like that. He made 6 starts. If there's a slight reason for optimism, it's that the offense coordinator will be John DeFilippo, who was his quarterback's coach in Philadelphia when they made the Super Bowl run. 6 starts for Nick Foles in 2017 with DeFilippo as his quarterback's coach. In those games, including the playoffs, he averaged 16.9 fantasy points per game, which last year would have been QB 22. And I think that's about right. The one thing I will say about Nick Foles, and I actually have him on a couple of teams this year, which is I've done deep super flex leagues, which are in essence 2 quarterback leagues. And so when you're in those leagues, you always like to try to get a third quarterback because pretty much any starting quarterback. And I will say he's one of my favorite late round targets. Like I drafted him as my third quarterback in Fishbowl, and one of the leagues I did in Vegas was a 12-team super flex league, and it was he's my third quarterback there. And here's the reason why. Once you get past sort of all the starters, I wanted somebody that I think, barring injury, will start every game. Because once you start getting down to the Eli Mannings, who could give way to Daniel Jones, who knows what's going on in Washington, Joe Flacco could at some point give way to Drew Lock. Nick Foles signed a big contract, and he is going to play every game. So I do think he's an interesting late-round target if you play in a super flex or 2 quarterback league as your third quarterback.
Leonard Fournette has been a massive disappointment in my estimation during the first 2 years of his career. Last season, he played 8 games, hit 133 carries. I've got him at running back 15. You've got him at running back 18. His ADP right now is running back 13. So people actually like him more than Matthew and I are suggesting. He's being drafted in the likes of Nick Chubb, Devontae Freeman, and Kerryon Johnson. Here's what you like about Leonard Fournette. He carries the ball a ton. He is the workhorse for Jacksonville when he's healthy. Here's what you don't like. Misses a lot of games, and his yards per carry. He literally averaged less than 4 yards per carry in his career for a guy that was drafted 4th overall.
3.7.
That's a problem. So
3.7 for his career. So he's incredibly inefficient.
But he's going to be a guy that I bet going into this year, Jacksonville will tell you they're optimistic about. Are you buying the optimism surrounding Leonard Fournette in Jacksonville?
Obviously not. I have him at running back 18, lower than you, lower than the ADP. He made the hate list this year. There's just so much risk here. Like, you're counting on volume. You're counting on volume for this guy. And by the way, you mentioned the games missed, right? So he's missed 11 games in 2 seasons.
Yep, not good.
And so some of it's injury related, and Stefania will...
Most of it's injury related.
Most of it is, but not all of it. Because there's a little bit of knucklehead here, right? He misses a team photo and gets suspended.
He gets suspended for punching a guy, right?
I mean, right, exactly. And like there was a traffic incident in this offseason that got some news. Like there's a little bit of, knucklehead risk here. And again, like I've met Leonard Fournette once, interviewed him, thought he was an incredibly lovely guy. We were talking about our kids. Like he has a young son. And so personally, I found him incredibly personable, but for whatever reason, it does seem like there's some sort of friction there with Jacksonville a little bit, right? There's a little bit of off the field risk. Would you say that's fair with Fournette?
That is fair. But say maturity has been something that's been called into question over the past 2 years, and it is winning time right now for Leonard Fournette, for everybody in Jacksonville. Because if they don't win this year, a lot of things could change. And for Fournette, though, he is still, if you talk to NFL evaluators, they'll mention that like one of the best pure runners. The numbers have not bared that out to this point. He still strikes fear into defenses because he's incredibly powerful and very fast. I think the question for me with Leonard Fournette is, A, is he staying on the field? And B, does the passing game involvement grow at all? Not a bad pass catcher. Hasn't been a beast in the passing game. Yeah. And that is where I think unlocks the potential for a top 8 running back. If he can find that element of his game. It's a lot of ifs.
It's a lot.
That he could be a star. I mean, he was drafted 4th overall for a reason.
Sure. So it's a lot of ifs. But Stefania, I'm curious because we always talk about this with guys like Fournette. Do you think he's injury prone, or has he just been unlucky so far in his NFL career?
I think the sample size is too small to really cast that label on him, but you have to acknowledge that the injuries have been an issue since he had that ankle injury in college. And I'm not convinced that he's really 100% past that. And maybe that accounts for some of the way that we see him running overall. And, he's great when he's near the goal line. I mean, he can be a touchdown machine because of his size and his power, but I don't have the same optimism for him globally as a running back as I did a couple of years ago, just from when I've watched him play over the last 2 years. So he definitely is a red flag for me.
So
this is one where we can. I don't know if we didn't talk about this before, but could we do a quick name game with Leonard Fournette? Everyone knows I have good buns.
Will you just smash him against the window and I'll try to lick him through the glass?
He wasn't expecting to see this kind of action.
That would be a mighty fine booty if you could get him.
All right, enough of the butt talk.
Jake Butt. I was beating it in the preseason, and now I need to beat it again.
You obviously work with puppets way too much.
I might try to plunder Corey Clement, but I'm sort of boned out.
Where did you find that out?
It's on Twitter. It's trending.
The throat can only handle so much.
A couple really obvious drops.
That's amazing. Who did that one?
Lee
That's
Martin,
amazing.
the great Lee Martin from Williams College, longtime listener,
yes.
longtime submitter of name game drops.
Lee, we need more name game drops. That was
We'll take
amazing.
him.
And
That
yes,
was
anyone that
amazing.
wants to send them, where should they send them if people want to submit name game drops?
FantasyFocusPodcast@gmail.com.
That's correct.
FantasyFocusPodcast@gmail.com. We've moved. ESPN has kicked us off of at ESPN, so it's now FantasyFocusPodcast@gmail.com. Send them in real quickly. Let me play this with you here, Field Minister Yates. Leonard Fournette or Devontae Freeman?
Devontae Freeman.
I agree. Leonard Fournette or Devontae Freeman, Stefania?
Devontae Freeman.
Leonard Fournette or Kerryon Johnson?
Kerryon Johnson. Not sure it's close.
Kerryon Johnson.
I agree. Leonard Fournette or Josh Jacobs, my fantasy ride or die?
Josh
Jacobs.
I agree. We're 3 for 3. Leonard Fournette or Marlon Mack?
Who I'd say Leonard Fournette in that case.
I'd still go with Marlon Mack for me.
A split vote. I think I have Fournette one spot higher on that one there. Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm right on that. Leonard Fournette or Chris Carson?
Ooh, I'm starting to talk myself into Chris Carson, but I'll stay just ahead on Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, I think I have Fournette ahead of Carson.
I will have Fournette ahead of Carson when my next rankings come out. So, I mean, there you go. We're all sort of down on him. Leonard Fournette or Derrick Henry?
Leonard Fournette.
Oh, Fournette. Yeah, just because of opportunity, I'm not.
I could see the passing game involvement increase for Leonard Fournette. I don't see it as much for Derrick Henry.
Two others, Leonard Fournette or Aaron Jones?
Leonard Fournette.
Sorry, I have a frog.
What do you think? For real, yeah.
I have Aaron Jones. Give me Aaron Jones.
I don't remember, but I think I have Fournette ahead of Jones.
I say Aaron Jones has more fantasy points this year than Leonard Fournette.
Why not? I say Leonard Fournette has more fantasy points this year than Aaron Jones.
Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
That was the lamest put it on the board ever.
He did the woohoo.
Yeah.
He's so
I think
excited.
board bets rear themselves a lot better when it's like we are actually having a thoughtful conversation. It's like, wow, I'm on one side and you're on the other. Like a name game doesn't necessarily.
Are you saying that wasn't thoughtful?
Believe it or
Comrade?
not, I think we can aim higher, comrade, when it comes to our board bets for the upcoming season. Let's talk about
Bollocks.
Not every running
Russian?
back needs
I need
to
Russian
have
phrases, Thirsty Kyle.
Yeah, isn't bollocks British?
Yeah, I don't know. Bolshevik. I was thinking Bolshevik.
Okay,
I don't know what that means.
I don't know that it's not every running back that is drafted in the top 20 needs to be handcuffed. And I would think that Reichwell Armstead is probably the player you want to handcuff Leonard Fournette with, but I don't know that you really need to handcuff him. I don't think that there is enough stock in this backfield beyond Leonard Fournette that I feel really strongly about handcuffing him. But
cut to Alfred Blue. What did I do to you, Field Yates?
The wide receivers here. Talking about the pass catchers, Matthew. Do we entertain which of these players do you give the most value to? I presume it would be D.D. Westbrook because you actually like him as wide receiver 31.
I really like D.D. Westbrook. Okay. So first off, I mean, I just think he's a talented player, right? Just, with inconsistent, being kind here, inconsistent quarterback play.
Right.
He's performed well, and especially last year. So then because last year you think about, he was 85. He had 85 targets from the slot, fourth best, 8th in yards from the slot, first of his team slot yards, 59% of his team slot yards, which was first in the NFL, targeted over 65% of his slot routes, also first in the NFL. And then you think about what Nick Foles has done over the last 2 seasons, right, including the playoffs. He completes over 70% of his passes to the slot and just 65% to all other spots on the field. He actually has a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio when he's targeting the slot last 2 years. 1-to-5 touchdown interception ratio targeting all those spots.
Is 70% good? I don't know. Is that good for the slot?
I would think so.
Oh, okay.
I would think so.
Got it.
But regardless of whether it's good or bad, it's better than 64%. It's better. It's right. It's just for Nick Foles, that's where he is the best. That is where he is the most comfortable. And that may not be a great rate, in terms of targeting the slot.
That might be the case for every quarterback, just for the record.
Probably. But we're just looking at what people have, right?
Okay, fair enough.
We just have look at what the Jaguars have. Right. I'm saying that from a talent standpoint, I think D.D. Westbrook's their best wide receiver. He also happens to play the slot. So I think I agree with you that, yes, most quarterbacks probably have a higher completion percentage to the slot than they do to the outside. But it doesn't matter if you've got a dog in the slot and you've got 2 studs on the outside. I am arguing that in Jacksonville, their best wide receiver is D.D. Westbrook.
Their slot receiver. I like that.
Slot receiver. That is my argument.
Fair enough there. He did have a team high with 66 catches last season and a target share of nearly 20%, which was 31st in the NFL. Any other pass catcher in Jacksonville that needs to be rostered or drafted? Marquise Lee just got off PUP. He's been banged up, Stefania.
It's been an ongoing problem. I'd give you his games played: 2014, 13, 2015, 10, 2016, 16, 2017, 14. It's always something's typically been a soft tissue injury. Again, that's a bigger red flag for me than anything else. And then obviously last year tears his ACL and has other damage in his knee in the 3rd week of the preseason. For him, just look at the timing too. Just getting pulled off the PUP now from a knee injury that happened in the preseason, I wouldn't expect his workload to shoot up drastically. So I'm a little worried about him.
Any wide receiver that you want to draft here besides D.D. Westbrook?
Draft, no. I mean, so, we've heard some buzz on DJ Shark. We talked about it the other day. So, guy to keep your name an eye on. Keelan Cole is somebody who had a lot of buzz last year. Didn't really pan out.
Kentucky Wesleyan, no big deal.
Yeah, so, I mean, somebody to... So, no, there's names to sort of keep an eye on. And we've seen Marquise Lee be good when he's healthy. But no, the only guy I'm drafting...
Not a talent issue.
Yeah, the guy I'm drafting is Keelan Cole. I'm sorry. The guy I'm drafting is D.D. Westbrook.
We'll help you with that. Yep.
The guy I'm drafting is D.D. Westbrook. If I'm drafting any Jaguars wide receiver, it is D.D. Westbrook.
Sure, I mean, I don't mean I'm going to invest in any of these players, but just an interesting wide receiver group. Like a lot of guys that you've heard 1 or 2 good things about, but I'm not sure that any of them becomes a staple of your lineup week to week. Time now.
It's New York Times bestselling author Matthew Berry with another self-serving, self-indulgent, all-about-me promo.
If you watch us on the live stream, sometimes you might see like this commish hat, or you see like this husband, dad, fantasy football legend cooler there, or what it's like. It's a, what do you call those? Tumbler.
Tumbler would be the proper terminology.
Tumbler. Yes. The tumblers are awesome. Like I use them all the time. They're actually really amazing. They keep your hot stuff hot and your cool stuff cool. They're really good. But I wore like a husband, father, fantasy football legend T-shirt during the marathon at some point. A lot of people, tweeted at me, commented on my Instagram where they could get that shirt. Anyway, all of it's available at fantasylife.com.
Nice.
So
and there's things for the ladies.
There are things.
I wear my fantasy football goddess shirt, tank top, ladies tank.
Yeah.
Every time I'm, boxing.
They're super comfy, right? They're super comfortable.
It's one of my favorites.
So yes, something for the ladies, something for the kids, something for the guys, whatever you need. So in terms of T-shirts, hoodies, we have trophies there. We have really sick trophies. We have really funny loser trophies as well.
Nice.
So grab all of that. The promo code MB10 will get you 10% off. So anyway, everything you need to have to gear up for the season. We even sell, what do you call them? Cornhole boards.
Cornhole boards, yes you do.
Yeah, at fantasylife.com. So anyway, check it out. There's a lot of fun stuff. There's new designs, new phrases. fantasylife.com.
Starfania, your turn.
Is it my turn? Well, Fantasy Focus Football is sponsored by ADT.
Sure.
What does real protection mean for our listeners? You can get all of the latest innovation.
Don't tell Chapin.
In smart home security from ADT, combined with 24/7 monitoring from the most trusted name in home security. You get a team of professionals designing and installing a secure smart home just for you. You get 18,000 employees safeguarding you with connection to first responders. You get the nation's #1 smart home security provider. You can get a secure smart home with everything from video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, smart locks and lights controlled from the ADT app or the sound of your voice. You can get professionally monitored carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. You get a system custom designed to fit your home. And you can get safety on the go in the car or when their kids are at school with the ADT Go app with an SOS button.
Great stuff there for Stevania, and thank you, as always, to ADT for keeping us protected. All right, Keith, time now for one of our favorite parts of the show. A couple of questions to bring us home. What say you today?
Well, we've got Ryan who wants to know if you would be comfortable leaving a draft with Galladay or Godwin as your wide receiver one. I'm assuming this is like in a 12-team or more league.
Comfortable? No.
Now,
okay? Yes. I'm assuming that if you've done this, it
means one of two things.
Right. So in one scenario, I feel better about it than others. So in the scenario in which you've gone running back heavy and you've gotten some good guys, I feel better about that rather than you drafted Mahomes in the first or something like that.
So, okay, yes, I agree with you that. So I think there's sort of two ways it happens. One would be what you just said, like running back heavy. You pound 3 running backs to begin the draft. And in that case, you're probably very well positioned with running backs. The other scenario, and maybe he's not saying this, would be, hey, that means you get Travis Kelce in one of the first 2 rounds. And you have Travis Kelce plus 2 running backs. I feel fine with that too.
Sure. But if it was a running back, Zach Ertz, and another running like a kind of a question mark running
Damian
back like
Williams.
Derek. Yeah, well, not even Damian Williams, but like a Derrick Henry-ish, kind of guy. So you have a question mark at running back, and then he's your number 1 wide receiver. Makes me a little uneasy. So would I feel super comfortable? Like, no. But would I be like,
it's passable?
Yes,
Could you
passable?
live with it? Yes.
Yes. Could you? Yes. I think it's assuming you've crushed the first 3 rounds at other positions, then I think you can live with it because we do like Godwin and Galladay. I mean, I think I have both guys as top 20 players.
Yep.
But I would feel much better if they were my number 2 wide receiver than my number 1.
All right, Keith, what else you got for us?
I know we have gone over this many times over the years, but as we always say, not everyone listens to every podcast. William wants to know, how much attention do you pay to bye weeks while drafting?
Yeah, I sort of earmark them, right? Because, it's one thing if it's like my first 3 picks or 4 picks and they all have the same bye, then it's a little bit of a problem for me. But like beyond my first 3 picks, I think I sort of just make note of them because I expect my first 3 picks to be on my roster throughout the entirety of the year. I always go into the year with that expectation. It's not always going to be the case. But the guys that you're drafting in the first 30 or so selection should be on your roster every week. And if you all of a sudden you've got your top 2 running backs that share a bye week, it's a little bit hairy. But I don't put a ton of, I certainly make note of it, but I don't weigh it too heavily beyond, once we get to later rounds for sure, don't even bother paying attention to it.
I agree. I mean, honestly, and you probably pay attention to it a little bit more than I do. I almost never.
Yeah.
Like, give me the good players. Like, am I going to pass on, like, if I've got a great player, like, I don't know, Chris Godwin, am I going to pass on Chris Godwin because he has the same bye week as my other wide receiver? Like, no. Like, I want Chris Godwin this year. Like, and whatever, I'll figure it out that 1 week. But, there's different strategies when it comes to bye weeks. And one is to, is just sort of ignore it and get the best team you can, and you'll deal with it as the season comes up. Because you never know who's going to get hurt, who's going to emerge on your team. So the other way is there are some people that actively try to stack a team with all the same bye week. And you know what? I'll take it on the chin in 1 week, but I'm at 100% the rest of the season.
That's got to be very infrequent.
Yeah, and it's not a strategy I recommend, but people do that.
I don't think you mean like their entire roster, just like some of the key players.
Well, I mean, obviously, some of their starting lineup, some of their key players.
So
but in general,
the
not much.
Spectrum of like ways to draft. Like, I've heard the like only draft your favorite team, right? Like draft players based off of handsomeness. Like that will be a strategy.
Sure, yeah.
Only have the same bye week. Like that's what you do, Stefan?
Yeah.
I only draft guys that are like wide receiver 3s with upside.
Yeah, good.
You know what I mean?
Wide receiver 3s with upside. That sounds like a phrase that we should latch onto here on the Fantasy Focus podcast. All right, great stuff, Keith. That as always, keep filing. Oh, you got one more question from to Keith. What do you got?
So in the chat, there was a discussion about a dynasty league. This is about collusion. All right, and so Cooper Kupp for OBJ was a trade in this league, and they found out that this was done to complete a trade in another league. So what would you guys suggest as sort of a punishment of sorts?
Kick him out of the league.
Yeah.
Collusion, what's the point of collusion's ridiculous. It's
cool.
stupid. Just don't
Well, this had to do with vetoing trades. This is what the idea was. They don't really like to veto trades.
Sure.
But
okay, that's fine.
In this particular circumstance,
they decided to veto the trade because basically it was a lopsided trade in one league in order to make a trade in another league. So these guys are both in two different leagues together.
Right.
And in one league, basically, there was probably a lopsided trade in the other league. And they basically said, like, hey, you help me out in this league, and in our league, I'll basically take advantage of you.
Yeah, it came to light that that's what happened.
They came to light that that's what happened. And I am actually with Field Yates here. Kick them both out of the league. Like, to me, it's just because if you're going to cheat, like, it's going to happen again. Right. And by the way, it is a game we play for fun, and I don't know what stakes were involved in this league, but that makes it even worse, right? If there's like real money involved in this league. So if there's real money involved in this league, like, you definitely don't want cheaters in there. And if it's a low stakes league, like, again, we're doing it for fun. Like, why are you cheating to win for fun? Like, this is a game we play, and so I have, like, I'm pretty forgiving with most things in fantasy football, but I have zero tolerance when it comes to cheating or collusion.
It's silly. Don't bother with it. Don't entertain it.
So if the question is what's the punishment? The punishment is find 2 new guys for your league. Two new people, I should say.
People for your league.
People.
Welcome aboard. It's the 3rd week of the preseason. Lots of games that might actually matter. We won't see all starters, but perhaps we'll see some guys you might be drafting in the early rounds tonight, tomorrow, or Saturday, or Sunday. So tomorrow when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about a lot of things pertaining to week 3 of the preseason. It'll be me and Daniel. Matthew and Stefania are off. Heading somewhere very fun. Congratulations. Enjoy the trip. In the meantime, continue to find everybody all over social media. I'll talk about the Bills tomorrow. Can't wait.
For @Field Yates, for @Stefania B87 on the gram, I'm @Matthew Berry TMR. Peace out!
You're in the 06010. Never gonna hustle in case you didn't know. Matthew Berry TMR.
You guys go ahead, give me grief for being on SportsCenter for 45 seconds. I think you could do better than me because I don't think you could.
Jailbait Field Yates.
You're terrible at #improv. At Field Yates. @Field Yates.
Stefania Bell.
Oh, don't let Barry convert you.
Secret Squirrel Daniel Dodd.
Make it happen.
Mediocre fantasy advice.
You're older than people realize.
That never stops.